In this lesson, we're going to go through how to set up your composition for your background painting. I'm going to also add a little few exercises to help you on the way. So let me show you how to do that. In this unit, we'll be focusing on planning out your painting. We are going to work on the thumbnailing part of this process. This is something I like to recommend to beginners to practice before starting your painting. I will be teaching you how to understand grouping shape elements together and planning out your colors. So in this lesson, we're going to focus on how to break down this design. I think breaking down the thumbnailing process will make it a lot easier for beginners as well. Even just diving right into the thumbnailing process. We want to keep it as simple as possible, but then sometimes as artists we like to add details to everything, so we get sidetracked a little. I want to introduce something called shape grouping. It is a good exercise to train yourself on how to see simple shapes in a design, so you know how to break up the painting. It is also good compositional training too. It also helps to keep what is designed the same when you paint. But first, let me just show you what thumbnailing means. Here are some color thumbnail examples from Toy Story 3. They are also called color scripts when you put them together. The idea is to show how the final colors and lighting will look at the end. You can see that it's really rough and only the important details are showing. Also, the use of simple shapes help get the idea across without spending so much time figuring out the details. Here's another example from Toy Story 3, but then here the color script is even more simpler. It's just blocks of color, blobs of the most important points that they want to show you in the story. Each square of color script shows a very important emotion, whether it's supposed to be happy, dangerous, scary, or just sad. As we've talked about in the fundamentals of color and lighting, all of that information applies to when you work on your color script or your thumbnails. So how do we break down our designs into something simpler? Let's practice on some film compositions. As I have mentioned before, I like to keep things very simple. So with this movie still, how am I going to break this down? I mostly like to break my compositions down into foreground, middle ground, and background. And I'm going to use some grayscale colors to show you how it's going to look like. So starting with this still, I'm going to turn down the opacity so I can see what's behind. Let's see what part of the foreground element should be. I'm going to say it's all these bushes and this structure on the right. So I'm going to use the darkest color to show my foreground. As well as the people, the characters in the film. And if I turn off the film still that I have on low opacity, you can see that I've already broken this down into simple shapes. I have no little details in it. I just want to get the overall shape in there. It's very clear, it's very graphic, and you can tell what's going on. If I turn it back on, you can tell how simple everything is. So that is going to be my foreground. Everything else in the back can be considered a background, but I just kind of want to break it down even more if I wanted to use this design to paint a thumbnail of. I'll go to the next layer, which is the middle ground, which is the field in the back, and not the background trees or the mountain, which is this one. I'm just going to label it my middle ground. So I've used a more mid-gray to show the middle ground. And as mentioned before in the color and light lesson, the further things go back, the lighter it gets, or the closer in value it gets to the sky. So right now, my sky is represented by the lightest color. And finally, the background. I also, with trees and foliage, I just like to break it down to simpler shapes. Got the mountains and the trees. And once I turn off the film still, got your background. So throughout this lesson, I'm just going to use FG as foreground, MG as middle ground, and BG as background. Just a faster way of saying it. And if I toggle the film still with the shape grouping that I've done, you can see how much more simpler it is. You can learn a lot from these references. You can see how certain artists play with contrast and lighting to highlight what they want you to see in the painting or the film still. I've just simply used the lasso tool to break these down into simple shapes. As mentioned before, the closest shapes or elements will be the darkest, and the furthest away will be the lightest, and this will give the composition depth. If you think about these like elements that are drawn on paper, you can put pieces of paper on top of each other, and the one on the bottom will become lighter as you add layers on. You can think about this exercise as if you're cutting out paper. You put these pieces of shapes on top of each other, and they'll create an image. So let's try more film compositions to break down. Here we have a still that is nighttime. Again, here we're not really thinking about what the lighting is, we're just breaking the composition down. I decided to go with an inverted palette. If you practice with this still and did it the way that I did it with the first example, that is completely fine. Here I just wanted to highlight the night sky. But most of the time you're not really thinking about the time of day with your shape grouping exercises. All you want to do is still keep with the idea of breaking it down into simple shapes. There's no details on the cars, everything's just a quick outline. It's very easy to see where things are and how far things are in the back or front. And we can try with one more example. And how would you break down this scene? And this is how I broke down the scene. Pretty straightforward. You can see how this exercise is very beneficial to your thumbnailing process. You kind of start to understand what elements are the most important and how you want to highlight your characters or the scene when you do your final painting. The bridge is such a big shape element to this composition. It's one of the things that frames not just the person, but also contrasts really well with the background. So by breaking this down, when I'm thumbnailing, I'll know that the bridge element and the foreground element and where the character is standing is going to be the most important part. And I'm going to use my best to do lighting and color to highlight that specific spot where the character is standing. Exactly how the film still does it. You have that lights highlighting the character, and then the bridge is a framing element. So with a few more practice stills, we can go back to the design that we're going to paint and see how we're going to break it down. You can also try a few more different compositions or film stills by yourself to just get comfortable on how to break those compositions down. Here, with the design that we're going to work with for this course, I'm going to show you how I'm going to break this down. So we do have a clear picture of what is a foreground and what is the middle ground and what is the background in this design. The foreground is the road and the cactuses and the rocks that are very close to the camera, so I've highlighted that as my closest foreground. And I would say the middle ground would be the gas station signage and then the gas station itself. The background will be the mountains itself. And so this is how I broke down this design. I've just kept everything very simple. I've got the darkest part of the road, the rocks and the cactus in the front, and then everything, middle ground, the store and the sign, the middle ground, and then the mountains in the back. I used the lasso tool to break down all the shapes, as well as put each of these elements in a different layer, so I can use this to do my thumbnail painting. Even if the background is already designed, you still want to keep that composition when you add color to it. Once you get used to knowing what you want quicker, you don't have to do these exercises every time you paint your backgrounds. Being able to group things into simple shapes will make it easier to know where things in the background are important. I've loved doing these exercises when I practice painting my own backgrounds, and they've really helped me understand what makes the background work. You can also use this exercise to practice composition skills as well, so try this out, study different movies, photography, as well as different illustrations. I hope these exercises have helped you understand how to set up your own compositions. In the next lesson, we're going to go over some color thumbnails.